Welcome back to the BestWorst50 podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Lewa. My next guest is an artist and educator based right here in Atlanta, Georgia. With an established career as a set dresser for the TV and film industry, you may have seen some of his work in shows like Ozark, Genius Season 2, and he just wrapped up the second season for Peacemaker, which I'm super excited to watch. Prior to his work in the industry, Jason taught fine arts in higher education and held positions in multiple places, but most recently, his last position in higher ed, he was the department chair for a number of years. With a BA in fine arts with an emphasis in sculpture from the University of Northern Iowa and an MFA in sculpture from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, he continues to make and exhibit his work in public spaces. Please welcome Jason Sweet. Jason, thanks for joining me.
Yay! Hey, thanks for the invitation, man.
Of course.
I'm humbled to be here, and I really appreciate it. You know, we've known each other for a while, and I've mentioned this before. I'm kind of awestruck as to why I'm on the interview. But I mean, not to take away from the podcast. It's just that I am just enthralled by what guests that you've had have accomplished, and it's truly humbling. That's all. It's come from a place of humility. That's all. So I thank you.
I appreciate that, Jason, and you know, I think the world of you, and you know, the reason why I decided to invite you on is when I was thinking about moving to Atlanta, I remember you and I went out and grabbed a drink. And we really had some heart-to-heart conversations about some real things in life. And just to disclose to everybody listening, Jason and I have known each other since 1994. No, sorry. Was it
94? Yeah, 94.
Dang! Oh my gosh! Oh, I said it, and my brain was like, "There's no way that could be true." 1994. So we've known each other for a long time. We pledged the same fraternity, the same. Different chapters, but the same semester. And so Phi Beta Sigma. And so, you know, we go way back and kind of grew up in our young adulthood together.
Yeah, man.
Fortunately, moving back to Atlanta, we've been able to reconnect. But really why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast is, you know, I looked up to you so much, and I continue to look up to you as an artist. You're just a great creator. And I love your story about how your career has kind of pivoted. So if you can just take a minute and just share with the listeners a little bit about your work in the TV and film industry. It's so fascinating. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I came into the TV film industry in 2017, and as what's known as a set dresser, and everything's in film. When you watch the credits, you see all these, you know, hundreds of people's names that make a film or TV show, and it literally is all that included. To make this source of entertainment or pastime for people to, whether if it's escapism or whatnot. And I came into it as what's known as a set dresser. And so what I accomplish, or my participation in film, is when someone's watching something and they see a set, the set dressers are the ones who, I guess, more or less decorate the set. You have the construction people that build the set. You have the paint people that paint the set. There's plaster things involved. Those are the plasterers. If there's rigging and electric, they handle usually the low lights and electrical aspects to the set. And then the set dressers do everything else. Now, with that being said, the set dressers actually can do everything. Because because some of those areas become gray depending upon what show that one is on, and so this is kind of, in terms of the work environment, this is what I do. I taught for 20 years, and I matriculated over into this. It's a wonderful ride. It's long hours, but it's so much fun. It is so much fun to participate in these shows that really are viewed all over the world.
Absolutely, Jason. And I think this is the fascinating thing about this career. For most of us, we get to turn on Netflix or, HBO Max or whatever your favorite streaming service is, and you get to kind of see the end results. But you're there real time when people are pulling these stories together for, visually for people to enjoy. And so, do you have any interesting experiences on the set? I know I mentioned a couple of the shows that you've been on, but is there a particular example of a story or an interesting experiences you had while you were on set?
I wish I could share the most recent because it's a John Cena TV show, but because it's not out yet, I can't really disclose too much of that.
Yes.
And it's a superhero movie, Peacemaker. It's on HBO Max. But I would say, and this is also one of the most rewarding situations. It was on a TV show called Ozark, and it's on Netflix. And it had starred Jason Bateman, Linda Looney, Julia Garner, and but it was award-winning TV show, streaming TV show, multi award-winning. And so there was an episode on season 3 that we had to it was an explosion scene of a shoe store, and they did 3 takes of this explosion scene. And we had, I guess, pre-gamed everything out, that after the first destruction of the set, we had pre-gamed with our area and construction to be able to redress the set so they can continue filming for the other 2 takes. And we did it so fast. We pre-gamed and planned everything out so fast that we got it done within really 3 to 5 minutes. And Jason Bateman was awestruck. He was because he was directing the episode and he was in the episode acting. And he was like, and keep in mind, he's a childhood actor. Yep. So he goes back to Little House on the Prairie back in the 70s and early 80s. And he was just like, wait a minute, you guys did our pre-grain, he was asking questions while we're redressing. We're like, yeah, yes. And he was just in awe of the planning. And what it did is it freed up their time to be able to get more creative. Because when filming, everything's on a budget. Doesn't matter if it's the actor, director, whatever department. Everything is kind of money, relates to the money and time. And so he was like, oh, this gives us more time to discuss what shots we want to do, what angles we can do. And so they did the other takes. And by the end of the evening, we had to take off, and they had to continue filming. And Jason Bateman, he tried to find us before we left. He ran outside to try to find us, and we had already left. But he sent us this email, each one of us this email, on how thankful he was and how rewarding it was and how impactful we were to that scene that allowed him to move the rest of the evening in such a smooth situation. So that was rewarding. That was so rewarding. And that's just one example, but things like that happen quite often, actually. But yeah, man.
That's incredible. No, I mean, first of all, just to humanize him, what a great person to recognize and to acknowledge it in a really personal way. But it's amazing. I mean, it made me think about, I work in a complex organization where everybody has a job, everybody has a responsibility. And if they take pride and they do it really well and they handle it well, everybody benefits, right? And so everybody matters, in the organization. I don't care if you're, the woman who cleans my office in the evenings, and she makes my day when she says hello to me and she remembers my name, to the president of the institution. And so, and we have to acknowledge that. But I don't know if often people take a moment to let people know how much they really appreciate something that they're doing. That because what I heard from you is because we were so efficient in really kind of game planning this, it gave them more room, more space to be creative and to push the show even further, which is incredible.
Yeah, man, and to hear that from a renowned artist, an actor, director. He's an Emmy Award winner from director from the TV show and actor from Ozark, and so in fact that season was the season that he won the award.
Fantastic.
And so it's just like it encompasses the what goes on behind the scenes and the results of that end up showing that people end up seeing it through a reward, I guess, a reward type situation. And to be a part of that is amazing. And to still kind of piggyback on what you're saying, there's all these other industries, higher education, which both both of I've had my past experience on that you're experienced in. There's government, whatever. There's all these layers of compartmentalizing departments. And I have to say, in the film industry, after coming out of higher education, it is the most efficient.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It is. It things get done, and they get done quickly. And when there's disagreements, they get resolved fast. There's not really enough time for politics because it's got to get made. And so people kind of jump on board. And that transition into film and I guess a past life before it was really eye-opening,
Well, at some point, you and I are going to have a longer conversation about that because
Yeah.
I love this idea of kind of parallel kind of thinking or parallel practice where you look at one industry and you say, okay, what about this industry is right? And how can I add that to my industry in order to make it better? And what you described to me is everybody's focused on a goal. And so everybody comes together with this purpose. And so they don't have as much time to linger in the politics and the arguing and the manipulation and coalition building. I'm sure it happens everywhere, but in the end, every minute you're wasting on set politicking, you're wasting dollars, right? You're robbing the world of delivery of, this outcome, this thing that we get to enjoy. And so one day we definitely have to talk about that. But I want to talk a little bit more about your higher education. So, and let's just talk about your art in general, Jason, because man, okay. So folks, listen. So, Jason, I was an art major. I might have disclosed back in the day. And Jason was like the only art major at another institution. I had a couple of brothers on my campus who did some design and art as well. Fraternity brothers. But Jason and I really he was kind of like a mentor and a coach on my creativity. Jason, you've done some amazing, huge sculptures, big permanent pieces in Iowa, I think you're in Atlanta. And then you taught for a while. Can you just talk about that world there a little bit?
Oh man, it's almost embarrassing. But yeah, man, I majored in art in undergraduate school. I knew from a young age that I always wanted to be an artist. I'm talking like from three to 4 years old, I knew. And I'm still an artist today.
That's right.
And it's just part of my makeup. It's part of my makeup. Like it's hard. It's even saying the fact that I'm an artist doesn't even really fit. It's just I make things because that's what I have to do. I have to do it. And so was in college. I was on like a track scholarship and all that stuff, full ride and blah 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 blah. I grew up doing making art and things like that. But when I went to college, I was a history major, and I would go to track practice. And while going to track practice, I'd go through the art building, and I would see people drawing in the hallway, and I'd hear the music, and I'd be at track practice like, man, I wish I was doing that, like drawing and whatnot. And so I had the second semester, I decided to take an art class, and I couldn't get into all the early classes like drawing and painting because they all filled up. And so I took a sculpture class, and I had, long story short, I had failed that class the first
Really?
semester, and was on academic probation and all this stuff. Dude, I was like, I got kicked out of college and was about to lose my scholarship. Actually, I lost it, but since I was the top track recruit, I had to retake a class, English writing class, and I retook it at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I had to retake that sculpture class. And I retook that sculpture class, and I got back on probation, and maintained my scholarship, full ride. And I got introduced on my second assignment. I got introduced to a particular project, and the material that we were working with, which was metal, the art professor did some things with it, and da 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 da. And when he manipulated the material, I said to myself, I want to do that the rest of my life. And so I would sneak into the art building at midnight, work in the dark. I'd get kicked out of the building. I'd miss track practice, all this stuff, so I could keep working with this material. Long story short, I quit track and became a full-time art major because that was more important to me. And I say all that to say, I had a very good professor who guided me into this art career, knowing that hey, you have options. You can go to graduate school. Hey, you can get your graduate school paid for. Hey, while in graduate school, you can teach. Hey, while you're out of graduate school and you finish, you can actually teach in college, and you can continue your research as an artist and have all that paid for. And so that was my path. And early on, because he was a mentor, and I saw other artists that had done the same thing, and met artists that I apprenticed with and things like that. That's a whole other story. Stories. And yeah, I took the path of higher education and did my artwork. And yeah, and I do exhibitions and public artwork and things like that. And my first art commission was in undergraduate school to do outside of for the University of Northern Iowa. I think we met that year when I was working on it. I was pledging. And yeah, it's still there today. That let me know, that experience let me know I can make money actually making this artwork.
That's right.
And so yeah, man, I don't know if I answered your question specifically.
You did, Jason. So just a couple things. Yeah, I remember that piece because I remember when I was visiting campus one time, we used to do road trips back and forth between Iowa City and Cedar Falls, just to hang with the fraternity brothers and party and all that stuff. And I remember you taking time to show us that work, and I think the work had been done by that point. And just how it lit you up. I mean, I can imagine 3-year-old Jason, like that was what 3-year-old Jason was working towards, even though you probably didn't know your path. I have a question. What was the name of the person and the faculty member who really helped to kind of guide you in that scope?
Oh, Thomas Stancliffe.
Okay. All right. Thomas Stancliffe. Very good. The other thing is, getting kicked out of the studio. I mean, you were just in love with this thing, right? This idea of making things, and that I also have the other quote, I have to do it. I wish that for everybody, that they can find something that they feel so passionately about. Do you ever lose time when you're working? Do you ever just like get in that flow state?
Oh yeah. Like I could be doing my artwork, and it's like 8 hours, 10 hours can go by, and it feels like I've only been in there an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah, no meals, no nothing, huh?
Yeah, no meals. I mean, even with that whole thing of like sneaking into the building, I would crack the window because I had a feeling they'd kick me out, and then I'd sneak back in because I cracked the window.
Can't keep Jason from his art. I love it.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So- yeah, I love it, Jason. So let's talk
Uh,
about your roots. If you could
yeah.
just, I got a chance to read a little bit, of course, from the information you and I exchanged, but just tell us about your kind of your early life and your roots.
So, early life, I'm born in Madison, Wisconsin, and adopted at a couple weeks. Actually, adopted on my sister's birthday.
Wow. Wow.
And the photos are funny because she's like, I didn't have a little brother.
Boo.
So,
Take it back.
oh my God. I think she finally forgave me.
Oh.
Like, I was like, well, I didn't, wasn't my fault. No, I'm joking. But no, she and I are really close. And so, but yeah, I was adopted at a young age. I always knew I was adopted. I'm adopted to a white family. I'm mixed, black and white. So I did look different than everybody. And I had some information about my biological mother and biological father, and that she was young, that she was athletic. And so for something about that kind of stuck with me, and that she had the interest in the arts. And something about that encompassed me at a young age, and I knew all that. And so I had took all that in. And so I had, athletic, ran track, all that stuff, but also did my artwork. And I had, I would just create things when I was younger, growing up. And also I had this, at a young age, I was on a jump rope team. We used to travel all over the nation, entertaining. So there was this whole thing of like entertaining and making artwork that was there early, performing, I guess, if you will. And so when I got older in college, I had received some information that she was trying to get in touch with me. And so I had eventually, in time, by the time I was 40, I had reached out to her, and I found out she was an artist. Yeah. And then she was kind of a well-known illustrator, science illustrator.
Really?
And we had developed a relationship, and then she ended up had a really strange accident where she fell down and hit her head and passed away. Man. And but it was just this whole thing of like seeing somebody for the first time that looks like you.
Oh,
yeah, that was really strange. Body language and mannerisms, and I was married at the time to my first wife, and she was apprehensive. I'm really dumping a lot out without filler. She was apprehensive about me meeting her, and wasn't really supportive. But then I met her, and we developed this relationship, and to meet somebody that you look like, but you never grew up with seeing yourself in somebody else, and also meeting somebody that you've never known that loves you more than anything. That was so eye-opening, man. That was a thing. And yeah, it's kind of like a very Cliff Note version of my life. Yeah. To that point. So,
well, I appreciate you sharing it, and I can't imagine any day of regret that you finally did reach out there and make all those connections. That yeah. She's clearly in you, and you're clearly part of who she was in her life. And it's kind of odd, when I think about my mom, I think one of the earliest memories I have of my mom was her firing the kid who used to mow our lawn in the neighborhood. And while she's firing him, she's sketching on a piece of paper a lawnmower, and it looked really good. And I remember she was done with her conversation, and I just remember being fixated on that and just and not seeing anybody draw before, but somehow finding that in my life later. And I can appreciate that connection. Between the two of you. It's in your souls,
Yeah, man, it was like I know this is going a different direction. It was like my first time talking to her. I was 2010 is when I met her. 2009, it was December of 2009, my first conversation with her, and I'm talking with her on the phone, and we must have talked for like 4 hours, and I fell asleep on the phone talking to her, and 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 I got woken up by my ex-wife going, "Who are you talking to?" I was trying to, it was like a lot of bantering, right?
Yeah.
So it like I was like, man, I lived 40 years of my life, nearly 40 years of my life, to have that experience of this person that I thought that was important in my life to like take away from it.
Mm.
And so but although I'm talking about it now, I was able to let that go for whatever she was going through, but she can't take away from that experience at the end of the day that I had the first time talking to my biological mother. And she answered the phone in the first ring when I called
Oh,
her. It was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
man.
I'm so grateful for you sharing that story. Jason, we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to get into the big question. All right. So, as you know, this is the Best Worst Thing podcast. And for those who are listening, whether this is your first episode you're listening to or whether you've heard previous episodes, this is the part where I ask our guests a question about the best worst thing. So, it's what was the thing? Kind of how did you get through it? And what did you learn from it that you go on to pass along to others? And so, Jason, it's interesting because we just had this conversation over the holiday.
Yeah.
Well, we'll tell people about the little icebreaker. But Jason, sweet, what is your best worst thing?
Bro, there's two.
Share 'em.
There's two of them, but I guess the first one that became the initial step was when I got divorced. And it's just my side. This is my side, obviously. But I had spent a lot of time with my firstborn, my first daughter, and so for a number of years, and so my ex-wife, or my wife at the time, um, we just weren't at the best place, and so I wasn't happy, and so I did some favorable decisions, and but I had confessed everything, I guess, to her, and so I pulled the rug out from underneath everybody of my choices, and so of infidelity and things like that, and so I had but at that time I had as an artist I had only made like three works of art, and I was in a situation prior to kind of pulling the rug out where I was paying all the bills. I bought a house, um, taking care of our daughter, and it's like things weren't good enough for this other person, and so from that, going kind of outside my marriage, I had and then confessing to her what had happened. And I was in a state where I kind of blamed her, which was, looking back, obviously was totally wrong. It was my choices, had nothing to do with her. And at the time, I didn't have the spine to tell her like what was going on with my mind, and so I'd lost everything, and I was homeless. I got kicked out the house, even though I had bought it. I was living in my car, and I'd have my daughter on the weekends and things like that. And I was teaching during the day, and I was doing this like security job at night in my car because I had no place to live. And so I had um, worked through that, and then eventually a friend of mine had let me stay with him, and had a room in his house, and he let me start making my artwork in his garage, and I went from making only like 3 works of art to over 50 works of art in a year, and that started my breakthrough. That was my breakthrough again of like, um, this is who I am. I'm an artist. I'm a father. I'm a good person. I can't blame this other person for my choices, and then good things just started happening for me each year, and which eventually led to me getting tenure track at where I was teaching to meeting my current wife, um, and continuing my artwork of doing public artwork and getting exhibitions and meeting other artists. And it was, you know, I think of letting go of blaming somebody else for my decisions is what the positivity of, I guess, or good vibes or frequency or whatever somebody wants to call it, is what kind of came my way. Is yeah, just not blaming things on other people for my decisions and my unhappiness. Yeah.
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 Let's talk about the moments of I don't think people realize how quickly homelessness can surround us.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, well, I actually somewhat can't imagine um, the added additional pressure of being a parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And going through that. Um, what helped you stay locked in during those times?
Thinking back to who, I guess my makeup as a person, I had a friend that was close to me that was like, "Hey, you should journal," and I started journaling. I had 3 different journals. I did a journal of going back to my earliest memory and just writing everything down up into to detail, like if there was a smell like from childhood. I mean, just really detailed. Oh, this day I went to the park. I met some kid. I don't even remember their name, and I remember the it was like the sun was shining. It smelled like that, like whatever that those kind of details were. I wrote it down, and then I had another journal that was just of questions of like whatever question came to mind. I would write it down, not answers, just questions. In so many years, and so that kind of helped me exhaust um, just getting things out physically, mentally to physically through writing, um, and documenting, to give a sense of I guess groundness and closure and state of being, and that was making my artwork again, and then eventually I got a and that led into like a tenure track situation. So yeah,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and I guess my other second pivot point that I mentioned before was um, I was doing a report for the college to kind of validate the program, its existence and contribution to the college, and so I was like a 150-page report of like data and stats and all this stuff, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to include letters of recommendations of the program into this report, and it wasn't mandatory. It wasn't even suggested. I just kind of came to me, and as I contacted former students who were doing some amazing uh, career paths in their lives with an art degree. One of them happened to be in film, and so he was like, "Do you want to see what we do?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You'll make this much in a day." I was like, "What?" And so I worked on this film for one day. It's called Uncle Drew. It's a with Kyrie
Yeah.
Irving and Shaquille O'Neal, a basketball movie.
Yep.
And I had never called in sick to while teaching and never lied about any of that stuff. And this is the first time I was like, I'm not feeling well. And so it was like the first day back of meetings, and I called in, and I was downtown Covington hanging neon lights.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm like, I want to do this the rest of my life. Like this is what I and an opportunity came mid semester, and where the former student who wrote a letter recommendation for the program and kind of mentored me in the film industry was like, hey, we have this show called Ozark. We're doing season 2. Do you want to join? You won't be full time. You won't be a core member, but if you listen to what I say, you could run the whole. You'll be able to be on the whole show. Keep your head down and listen to my advice, which is what I did. So mid semester, I turned in my resignation
Mm.
and sold my car, pawned my tools to get into the union IATSE, which is International Alliance of Stage and Theatrical Employment Employees. And I got into the union. Week and a half later, I bought my tools back, and 2 months later, I was able to buy a new car. And I probably made like 3 times more than what I made from teaching. And I haven't looked back, and it's been an amazing experience. I brought other people into the film industry, students. I brought them into the film industry. Um, yeah, man, it's been an amazing ride. Um, yeah, and I still continue to do my artwork. With that being said, in spite of all these trials and tribulations and pivots, is my artwork is still there with me the whole time.
Mm. That's the thread
You
that's
know,
woven through it all.
yeah,
So just a couple of things, Jason, just in reflection from what you've just shared. Kind of want to go back to the first best worst thing about making some choices in an unhealthy relationship um, that eventually found you kind of homeless um, and you mentioned two things. One of them, of course, is the journaling and the habits of journaling and grounding yourself in those topics. And I think that that's an invaluable tool and an excellent coping strategy and mechanism to utilize. But something you said that was really important, which I really hope that people listening, especially if you're going through a tough time, is oftentimes I know when I've gone through a tough time, I've wanted to turn the attention towards those who are wronging me, whether it was the world or whether it was an individual or a group. But you said you kind of let up on the blaming of other people for your decisions, and
yeah,
that to me is just such a powerful statement of just not putting your decisions on somebody else and taking full ownership, because then that gives you agency to also go at it a different way too, and to make it better for yourself. And I think that's really hard in the moment, but I think that that's a place that people want to get to if they want things to get better, for sure. The other thing I really think that struck me here is a former student of yours, who writes a recommendation, invites you in to check out the work that he's doing, and then invites you to consider doing it yourself. And then the language I wrote this down, the language you said is, he mentored you.
yeah,
I don't, like, it's a very humbling thing to say. A former student of yours, you taught art,
Mm-hmm.
explored their field, doing really well, and you're willing to say he mentored me.
Yeah.
Man, talk about that a little bit. I don't know. Talk about that. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because and his name is Woody Trend.
Shout out to
And
Woody.
yeah, shout out to Woody. And it's funny because I say to him all the time, like, man, you saved my life.
Oh,
He's like, no, you saved mine. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I was going through a lot when I first sat in your class the very first day. And I knew he changed his major to an art major. That's a whole, he changed his major to an art major. And he's like, you changed my life and you inspired me and all these things. And it was this thing where I, I he kind of hinted at and shared that he wanted to return the favor. And after after the second show I worked with him on, he was like, "Okay, we're even." I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Dude." I'm like, "Huh? We're even? What do you mean?" Like, I wasn't even like thinking like think like that. So that blew my mind away of how much of an impact. Again, the humbling thing of like not knowing the impact of through teaching that I had in somebody else's life, but he definitely saved my life in the way that I imagine of being able to at least make a financial return on my investment into people or into things and be comfortable, like not have not have to worry about if I could buy a pair of shoes this month or next month, you know, to be able to do that and afford to go visit my daughter.
Mm.
I mean, that's a whole other thing that's left out is when, whew, I mean, it's like my oldest daughter moved and I had to teach and work a part-time job and drive down to Miami, Florida the same day just to turn around and pick her up and nearly fall asleep on the road. And the hood of my car, like the latch coming open and I had to hold it down by a shoestring. I mean, it's like there's a lot of things that are there, and then all that changed when I started, you know, in I could fly her now to Atlanta.
Mm.
I could send her money while she's in school. I mean, I paid child support, but I could send her more money. You know, those things just put the mind at ease and create less stress and all that. To still answer your question, is that former student saved my life. I was depressed, dude. I was really depressed, and because I was, in terms of financially, I knew I had more value than that. I knew I was worth more than what I was getting paid, and I knew that I wanted to create more artwork, and I couldn't afford to do that with what I had, with what I was making. So yeah, man.
You really did. That's amazing. I think that I think there's so many. I have this certain kind of belief or faith that I am having an impact on people, seen or unseen, and they're having an impact on me, whether they know it or not. And Jason, you're one of those people who's had that impact on me in my earliest uh, days. A lot of what I do doesn't seem like art, but what's helped me in my career is my creativity and my ability to think and solve problems in new and novel ways and different ways and just to be creative. I think that's the strength of mine. And that's something that you help cultivate in me. And it's something I leverage every day in my career. And I can see why your students got so much from you, but I also can appreciate how much you and I have received from those who we think that we're serving, but there's in a way they're doing us a favor as well. And so thank you for sharing that, Jason.
No, thank you. And that's good to hear. You know, it's like we've had our mentors in our lives, and it's just about like taking those mentors and still passing on the information, which which is like that's the rewarding part of it because it one way what I've discovered is one way or another it gets returned back. And so it's just about being patient and letting things happen, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and putting good out in the universe, you know. Even when I made those, you know, bad choices when I was in my first marriage, um, at my heart, I knew I was still a good person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know. So yeah,
Yeah, you are, and I've always known you as that from the start. So I think we connected so quickly when back in the
yeah.
day. So we're at that time where I want to make sure that people know, besides tuning into season 2 of Peacemaker with John Cena, which if you haven't seen season 1, it's on HBO Max. Check it out. I'm not getting paid for endorsing the show or promoting it at all. All this podcast comes from my pocket, but I really enjoyed season 1, and I'm really excited about seeing your work come to life on season 2, and you're part of the work, Jason. But if people want to kind of see you online, what's your website that people can check out?
So outside the film industry, I'm an artist, sculptor, performance artist, and it's jasonsweet.art, or excuse me, jasonsweetart.com. So it looks like Jason Sweet Tart. so, but yeah, it's yeah, I that's I do my artwork, and it's way different, separate from the film industry. And that is my passion. That's my lifetime existence of creating that work. So yeah,
that's great, Jason. And I know you're going to do it because you have to do it. You've always had to do it. You have to do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Wallewa. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at Boom Note on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cooled Jets Music. You can follow him at Cooled Jets Music on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
This one's for the good times and this one's for the bad. This one's for the day that was the best we ever had. This one's for my good friends and this one's for my foes. The ones who get up on your skin and do not even know.